Democrats are getting ready to move forward on impeachment, whether Trump is in office or not. Even worse, some Republicans are going to help them. So much for healing and unity. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line.
Justice is called for as we address the act of insurrection that was perpetrated against the Capitol complex last week. Right now, our managers are solemnly and prayerfully preparing for the trial, which they will take to the Senate.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. That was House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing her intention to move forward with impeachment proceedings, despite the fact that President Trump is set to leave office in a matter of days. Incoming Majority Leader Chuck Schumer echoed Pelosi's sentiments, promising that the president would be, quote, held accountable in the coming weeks.
Soon, the Senate will conduct a second impeachment trial for President Trump for inciting the violence on the Capitol last week. Donald Trump remains a threat to our democracy and will be held accountable for what he's done, whether or not he's president during the trial.
Of course, this would be the first time in American history that an American president would face impeachment in the Senate after he's already left office. That's when the trial would have to happen if Nancy Pelosi transmits them over, which she plans to do. This is hardly a move that would inspire unity and healing. For his part, soon-to-be Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is remaining mum on where he stands on the matter of the president's guilt or innocence. Behind the scenes, McConnell's reportedly telling Republican senators that their decision on whether or not to convict Trump over the Capitol riot will be a, quote, vote of conscience. Let's look at what's really going on here, because we've been told by Democrats that the reason for this was because there was a clear and present danger. And yet now we are mere hours away from the president leaving. Nothing has happened. So was there really that clear and present danger from the president finishing out his term? Or is that just overheated rhetoric from Democrats looking to capitalize on this moment in time by pushing it as far as they possibly can and destroying Trump in every way? That's what they want to do. They want to ruin this president. They want to make sure that he can never run again. In fact, that's the plan. They want to immiserate him after leaving office. They want to make sure he does not have a voice anymore. That's not about healing. That's not about unity. So Democrats are playing politics with this. There's also the issue of the constitutionality or lack thereof of all of this. There has never been an impeachment trial after a president has left office. That would be truly unprecedented. And how could the president, when he's not even the president, mount a proper defense in the United States Senate? How is that going to happen? Well, the whole thing looks like a sham, doesn't it? If they really wanted unity, if they wanted to calm everything down right now, which is what Democrats claim, wouldn't they say we're going to let the will of the people as expressed in 2016 expire in its 4-year term as it's supposed to? We'll allow this to just finish out. Why do this? Well, because we all know that this is an opportunity for the Democrats not only to repudiate Trump and Trumpism, but also to cause a massive fracture in the Republican Party. They are looking to steamroll the GOP with their agenda, with the legislation they're going to pass, with Biden's executive orders. We already know that. They're telling us that much. So they can also, with this one moment, create intramural fighting. They can create a problem from within the GOP for the GOP so that it cannot mount any effective resistance to the Biden-Harris agenda. Think for a moment, what would it be like if the GOP, without any real leader to speak of right now, without anyone to speak for the tens of millions of people who voted for Donald Trump and still believe in the promises that Trump made in the 2016 or in the 2015-2016 election cycle, what is it exactly that they think would be accomplished by, at this point, making it impossible for the GOP to be able to unify? Why make this a circular firing squad? Why create that kind of dissension from within the ranks? Well, it benefits Democrats tremendously. So they hope that we turn on each other. They hope that everybody who voted for Trump, everybody who's a Republican, a conservative, you name it, will look for people to blame for what has been a very rough post-2020 election period. From all the stuff about about the election results to now the riot on Capitol Hill. This has been very damaging and very difficult for not just the Trump presidency, but for the legacy of the Trump movement. It does not help us at all, though, at this point, to allow the Democrats to ram home their advantage here by trying a post-presidency impeachment trial. This is just absolutely nuts. It would also be rewarding Democrats for the 4 years of lies that they got away with on Russia collusion. They have wanted to remove this president from day one. In fact, they were willing to lie endlessly and repeatedly about this president, to say that he was an asset of the Kremlin, that he was Putin's puppet, a stooge of Russia. They said all of that. None of it was true. And they repeated it for years, in fact, for 4 years. So we know that their goal all along has been to achieve the removal of the president from office. They have won against him in an election. For people that really respected our system, for people who actually cared about this republic and our sacred institutions, wouldn't they be willing to say, we won, let's move forward and let's bring the country together? That's not what Democrats are doing. They've wanted to get rid of Trump from the very beginning, and now they see one last opportunity. And for any Republican to cave at this stage, for anyone to say, you know what, let's give Trump a kick in the behind on the way out from office, it's just wrong. It's wrong, it's divisive, it hurts our party, and ultimately it hurts our country because of the precedent that it sets, and also the sense that it is meant to humiliate and undermine 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump for re-election this time around. They don't need to have any more sense that the system does not represent them and will not respect their ideas or their desires. And that's exactly what would happen if they remove Trump from office after he's been removed from office. I mean, what they're going to do is ban him from running again. It's reckless. And I certainly hope that Republicans don't go along with it. I hope that Mitch McConnell doesn't go along with it. But there are some very hurt feelings and bruised egos from within the GOP about Trump stretching back for a long time. Some of them want payback. As thousands of National Guardsmen prepare to police Washington, D.C. ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration, the FBI is reportedly vetting servicemen out of a fear of a potential, quote, insider attack. We'll have more on that with TownHall senior columnist Kurt Schlichter when we come back. Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to do it on your own? I felt exactly the same way as you did until about a year ago. I've always loved the idea of real estate investments, but I didn't know how to invest in real estate while staying committed to my profession. I do 5 hours of original programming and content every day. How was I ever going to take the time to invest in real estate on my own? Well, then I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took all of the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an awesome property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me. And now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to see how it works. It's straightforward, long-term, stable real estate investing with professionals who have a long track record of helping people just like you. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to check out exactly how Done For You Real Estate does their business and can bring it to you as well. Doneforyoubuck.com. That's doneforyoubuck.com.
Chief, what will the MPD have deployed on Inauguration Day?
Every available resource, that's our entire department. Our total department will be activated. We'll have support of law enforcement officers from all across our country to the tune of about 2,500 that will be here to support us in this effort.
Over the past few days, the Capitol has turned into something of a fortress with the tightest security Washington, D.C. has seen in recent memory. Security concerns of an insider attack on Inauguration Day have prompted the FBI to vet 25,000 National Guard troops. In an interview with the Associated Press, Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy said he warned commanders to be on the lookout for any problems within their ranks, saying, quote, "We're continually going through the process and taking second, third looks at every one of the individuals assigned to this operation." Here to break down what's actually happening in our nation's capital from a security standpoint is Kurt Schlichter, senior columnist at TownHall.com, lawyer and Army veteran. Kurt, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Buck.
Let's start. I wanted to have you react before we get deeper into the security precautions here and how it feels like this is being now leveraged beyond security for political purposes. Here is sitting member of Congress Steve Cohen speaking about our National Guard. Play it.
You know, I was thinking the Guard is 90 some odd percent, I believe, male. Only about 20% of white males voted for Biden. You got to figure that in the Guard, which is predominantly more conservative, and I see that on my social media and we know it, they're probably not more than 25% of the people that are there protecting us who voted for Biden. The other 75% are in the class that would be the large class of folks who might want to do something. And there were military people and police who took oaths to defend the Constitution and to protect and defend who didn't do it, who were in the insurrection. So it does concern me.
What do you make of that, Kurt? He's basically saying National Guard's got a bunch of white guy Trump voters who might do something on Inauguration Day.
Well, look, I'm sifting through that word salad trying to find something that makes any sense. It's offensive. It's stupid. It's ignorant. Everywhere from calling a small riot an insurrection to impugning the loyalty of the guys I served with for 23 of my 27 years in the military, including commanding disaster and civil support operations. The idea that somehow these guys are secretly going to attack maybe or do something. He's not specific, and when people aren't specific, I put on my lawyer hat and I start thinking this guy's trying to pull a scam. And what this all is, it's all an information off. Putting 30,000 troops, which is 3 divisions, that's one more than we landed at Omaha Beach, into Washington, D.C. is really just it's supposed to send a powerful message of power. It's supposed to send a powerful message to dissuade, I guess, another 100 idiots dressed as Vikings from rushing into the Capitol. And it's just, it's so sad when you have a government official trashing our soldiers based on their race. When I led Guard soldiers, when I led active soldiers, to use a hoary cliche, they looked like America. It wasn't all people like me. It was people of all different ethnic groups and everything. But we didn't care about any of that. All we cared about is the green on our uniform and the flag on our shoulder. And that's how our people went forward. And that's how our people are going for. And that's how these troopers are going for in Washington. And to be slandered like this by some punk congressman is almost too much to take. You know, those guys can't say it because they're on duty and they have to pretend to have respect for him. I don't. I think he's garbage. I think he owes an apology to every man and woman wearing the uniform of the United States of America.
Nancy Pelosi seems to have changed her tune quite a bit among many other Democrats. Here she is last week tweeting out that even during this dark time in the history of America, we find reasons for hope. It was my privilege to personally thank members of the National Guard working to protect our nation's capital. Thank you for protecting democracy. Okay, and look, I'm a big proponent of the Guard. You actually were serving alongside people who were in the Guard. But I also remember that Nancy Pelosi, among other Democrats, over the summer during BLM riots, including riots just outside of the White House and riots that tried to burn down one of the oldest, most historic churches in Washington, D.C., next to the White House, we all remember that, that the deployment of the Guard then was considered fascism, that when Senator Cotton tried to write, or did write an op-ed in the New York Times about deploying the Guard to deal with those riots, the Times pulled it. It was viewed as violence to even suggest deploying the Guard. What changed, Kurt?
How useful it was to have the Guard. Look, when the rioters were BLM and Antifa and they were burning down your business or your audience's business, that was okay. You know, they're just peaceful protesters. But boy, when the establishment gets threatened or feels itself threatened, that's a whole different story. Then it becomes serious. Then it becomes then it matters. And I particularly love your reference to the New York Times. Their collective whiplash on pulling that 180-degree turn, it's just like a chef's kiss to the hypocrisy that we've seen throughout the last year.
And we actually have Nancy Pelosi here scolding Trump for deploying National Guard. This was back in June.
This afternoon sent a letter to the president expressing concern about the increased militarization and lack of clarity that may increase chaos. I'm writing to request a full list of the agencies involved and clarifications of the roles and responsibilities of the troops and federal law enforcement resources operating in the city. But what authority is the president sending people from these other states into D.C.? Who do they report to? Do they report to their governors? Is there a chain of command here?
A lot of questions and criticism
Those
for
are
what
great
she called militarization during widespread riots, including just outside the White House. Kurt, what happened in Nancy?
Well, you know, Nancy decided it was much more useful to pretend she was a friend of the troops. You know, she did have a good question about the chain of command. I would have liked to have seen who the chain of command was that led our troops, who are issued sleeping mats, who are issued sleeping bags, who all have access to cots, to strew them around the Capitol Rotunda and then allow photographers to troop through and take photos of them. I'd like to find out who that commander is and find him a new job, maybe handing out volleyballs at Nome, Alaska.
Yeah, those photos certainly seemed, I mean, we're showing some of the footage up here. The photos in particular, I've been in war zones, and I did not see people sleeping on marble floors quite like this.
No, there's no excuse for that. That is purposeful. They want that image. They want people who don't know any better to be shocked at how hard it is on the soldiers because of these horrible guys dressed like Vikings. And in reality, it's their chain of command totally letting them down by not putting them in proper billets, in a proper place to be tactically dispersed, because deep inside the Capitol is not it, and not allowing them to use the issued uniforms. I mean, we have very, very good equipment, very good sleeping mats, very good sleeping bags. Everybody's got a cot. And instead, you've got this cluster. Don't these guys have sergeants? Isn't there a whole building full of generals about 6 miles away that saw this on TV and should have come out and done something? What happened to our army, Buck?
It looks like people wanted this image to get out there. Kurt Schlichter, everybody. Kurt, always good to see you. Thank you for your time and your service, sir.
Thanks for having me.
A new immigrant caravan is slowly making its way to America's border with Mexico. Are we about to see a repeat of Obama's failed immigration policies, this time with the Biden administration? We'll take a closer look at tonight's Buck Brief. So we have a new sponsor. These guys are awesome. Mammoth Nation. They're America's conservative discount club. Their mission is to fight for the conservative values and causes we all care about. That includes conservative candidates, the police and first responders, active military and veterans, American farmers and ranchers, the Second Amendment, and much more. The proceeds from your membership and purchases help support all of these great causes. It's better than a donation. In return for your patriotism, you get great discounts on things like hotels, shopping, wireless, prescriptions, telehealth, and more. Spend your money where it counts. I'm a lifetime member. You should become a lifetime member too. Join the fight. This is a great program and a great deal. Go to mammothnation.com/buck. That's mammothnation.com/buck. Become a lifetime member today. All you have to do is go to mammothnation.com/buck. Check it out. Great deals, great causes. Mammoth Nation. Turns out if you replicate the failed Obama-era policies, you also replicate the Obama-era crises. I'm talking, of course, about the impending illegal immigrant caravan fiasco that is slowly heading toward our southern border. It appears Biden's public promise to reverse every sensible, law-abiding, effective immigration policy from the Trump administration is already paying out its dividends. Thousands are now ready to take Biden up on his offer of open borders and amnesty by heading north. As we know, crime, drugs, and human trafficking travel with these caravans. A lot of societal ills, no matter where of the border, which side of the border you reside on. Let's examine what got us here and what it means for the future of our nation in today's Buck Brief. Here you can see video of what's going on right now in Guatemala. They are breaking through border posts, thousands. just running for it. I mean, the police are overwhelmed, huge amounts. You see, this is just one caravan. They coordinate this beforehand. They have groups, humanitarian and activist groups that are assisting them along the way, and they are overwhelming security forces on their pathway to get to our southern border. Remember, they're not going to walk the whole way. They'll eventually get on buses and trains and take them but they walk at the border itself because that's a place where they can then do these all at once mob actions that overwhelm. Here's another one. I mean, this is what happens. You have security forces deployed and people just having a run for it across, and they can't stop them. Now, why is this happening? Let's take a moment to take a look at why this is going on right now. Because the timing of this is not a coincidence. And in fact, it's not a surprise at all. The Biden administration has promised that they would get amnesty done. The Los Angeles Times reporting on it here. Biden plans early legislation to offer legal status to 11 million immigrants without it. Also known as illegal aliens or illegal immigrants, but notice that they don't even mention that in the headline here. Immigrants without legal status. That's the way they like to frame it. So there'll be 11 million people who will owe their status in the country to the Democrat Party. If you don't think that's going to have a massive impact on our elections going forward, I don't think you're paying very much attention. But let's look. So amnesty is the big one, and it's not clear what will prevent that from happening. It's not clear what Republicans could even do if they wanted to stop this, which I'm not even sure all of them are trying to do that. I think there are a lot of Republicans, a lot of people in the GOP that are beholden to the donor class. They want cheap labor for big business because big business writes checks to people that, take a lot of advice from the Chamber of Commerce. Big business is very effective as an advocate for near open borders. So there are Republicans, therefore, who have also been bought off to this end. And Democrats, as we know, have an internationalist, globalist philosophy that means borders. Come on, who needs borders, really? This country needs a much greater influx of people from outside the country because, as Democrats will tell you, illegal immigrants are, in fact, our future. It's not even legal. We're not even talking about legal immigrants at all here. Legal immigrants are great. Legal immigrants are a welcome part of the American family. But illegal immigrants, you would think, might be an issue for Democrats. They had been an issue for them up until a few minutes ago, it feels like, when all of a sudden now they're just saying amnesty. Remember when Obama tried to get comprehensive immigration reform and some people said, hold on a second, you mean amnesty, right? And then it shut the whole thing down because that's the only thing you will get for certain. The only guarantee you have in this process is that you will get a full-scale amnesty going forward. So you also have the Remain in Mexico policy that will get changed. Now, why is this so significant? Well, because the way that the caravans had operated in the past, and I was down at the border, I saw this myself in real time. I saw apprehensions. I saw people surrendering themselves to Border Patrol, knowing the whole routine. They knew that if they claimed asylum, and this is what happened under Trump's first couple of years, if they claimed asylum, they would go through this process where they had to meet a very low bar for the credible fear standard. And that all they had to say was, I have a fear of violence and persecution in my home country. It was generally Honduras, but not exclusively. Honduras or El Salvador or wherever they had come from if they got the talking points from the drug cartels, who, by the way, were making at least hundreds of millions of dollars from the control of this caravan and illegal immigrant movement across their plazas, their territories, which they break the southern border into for the purposes of smuggling everything, including people and drugs. So the Remain in Mexico policy that the Trump administration put in place meant, okay, you can apply for asylum. We believe in asylum still in this country. You can apply for asylum, but you wait in Mexico while your asylum court date comes up. This destroyed the incentive for a vast majority of the people who were showing up and doing an illegal crossing and then a surrendering and claiming retroactive asylum, which is what they were doing, or secondary asylum, meaning that the secondary asylum is when you've already crossed into the country legally and then said, oh, now I want asylum. That's so they could be released into the country waiting for their court date, and they just don't show up in court. Remain in Mexico meant that they would actually have to wait on the other side of the border until their court date, which meant that they also could then be removed on an expedited fashion afterwards. And there is some effort to hold this back right now. You see that there's a Guatemalan caravan right now, or caravan rather, in Guatemala from Honduras that's being blocked on its way there. But there you have it. Thousands and thousands of people, they know that if they can get to the U.S. right now before there's an amnesty, there will be no way they will not get either de facto or de jure covered by that amnesty, meaning that they're not going to be deported when there's been a legalization of 11 million people in the country. And just wait until Democrats can find a way to get voting privileges for the newly created permanent residents here who had been illegal in the country up to this point. What this means for the GOP and the Republican Party is not good. It's going to be a major problem. So we have to pay close attention to this one. Despite the fact that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has already written a book touting his own leadership during the COVID-19 outbreak, his state's vaccine rollout is proving disastrous. After the break, we'll take a look at New York's struggle to distribute the life-saving drug with talk show host Mark Simone. Stay with us. It's all going south for New York's COVID vaccine rollout so far. Former head of the state's Democratic Party, 73-year-old John Sullivan, traveled to Florida to get his first dose of the shot, blaming New York's Governor Cuomo, and he said that the rollout of the vaccine under Cuomo has been too slow to help the elderly. This as COVID cases rise in the Empire State, and New York City's Bill de Blasio, the mayor here, says without a resupply mission, the city will run out of vaccines by the end of this week. Here to discuss the slow rollout and the looming shortage is talk show host here on 710 WOR NYC, Mark Simone. Mark, good to see you.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Mark, I feel like we expected there to be some issues, but somehow, even with low expectations, the rollout of the vaccine in New York and many other states, but we'll focus in on New York for right now, hasn't even met the very low expectations that we would have.
Well, I notice I'm always invited on shows about every 3 weeks to explain why Governor Cuomo messed up something from the beginning, from the nursing home scandal to this, to that, to this. Well, the latest is the vaccine. He messed up in the beginning. Obviously, there's a limited supply coming from the federal government. But I don't know if you remember, but in the first couple of weeks, he ended up having to throw away vaccines. About 50% of the vaccines never got given out. He threatened the hospitals in the beginning. It was a huge mistake. You have certain categories supposed to go to 75 and up, or healthcare workers. But in Florida and other places, if anybody was around, they would just vaccinate them. Cuomo threatened the hospitals, $1 million fine, and you'll never get another vaccine if one wrong person is vaccinated. They got so frightened that they were throwing out vaccines at the end of the day rather than giving to anybody. We might have lost 10, 15% of our vaccines that way. Now he's lifted all those restrictions. The process got going, but he ran out of vaccines. He's only done 4% of New York State. Other states have done 10% and more. If you watch him around the country and you think, what a leader, look at these briefings. He's got charts and graphs and diagrams and facts, and it's all briefings.
All for
That's
show.
all he's.
Yeah, it's all for show. Here he is on Twitter. Over 1 million vaccine doses have been administered in New York State to date. As supply ramps up, we're ready. Hashtag vaccinate New York. This is a guy who has been writing books about his COVID response. You'd think that he would be more prepared than he has been, and yet the media doesn't put a glove on this guy. They trash DeSantis, who by all numbers you can look at is doing better than Cuomo in his response as a governor, and yet Cuomo's the hero, Mark. How is that?
Again, it's all briefings. I hate to say it, but Democrats seem to love the show. They seem to love the right narrative, the right fantasy, and have created a fantasy about this guy. It's a great book. It's a great briefing. Unfortunately, can't get anything done when it comes to actually enacting anything. You know, in New York State, we got the most brilliant CEOs and business guys in the world. If you called on them, they would be happy to come in and get one of the great CEOs, somebody who's used to distributing products all over a state. Let them run the program. He's not a guy who ever turns to anybody. He's an expert on briefings. Actually executing, that's not his field. He doesn't know anything about doing that. It's a huge problem for New York in every step of this virus. from the nursing homes to the restaurants to keeping businesses going to giving out vaccines. He's been a disaster. And he always blames Trump as if Donald Trump is supposed to set up the distribution. We have the distribution route. We've got more hospitals than anybody. We've got more pharmacies than anybody. We have the distribution. Just start using it.
Let's take a look at the national level and what we're dealing with there. Here is HHS Secretary Azar talking about Biden's vaccine goal. Play it.
This is a concerted effort by the new team to down-talk where things are so they can look like heroes when they come in and just carry forward the momentum that we have established. This whole President-elect Biden, and we'll have 100 million shots in arms by the end of April, the first 100 days. We will have distributed 250 million doses of vaccine by the end of April. If they've only done 100 million vaccinations by then, it will be a tragic squandering of the opportunity that we have handed them.
Just goes to show you, Mark, that, unless you see that clip from Azar, the media talks about the 100 million by the end of April as though Biden is the great hero of our time. What do you make of it?
Well, listen, that could be why Governor Cuomo's putting on a show about how everything's a disaster. And then maybe after the inauguration, maybe on Thursday, all of a sudden it's not a disaster. Yeah, the Biden plan is 100 million doses in 100 days. I think it's feasible since it was already enacted and was already happening anyway, since all of the companies announced they could make that much vaccine. So, but again, within 2 days after the inauguration, liberals will convince themselves it was Biden that somehow did it.
And also, what is I keep hearing that Biden's going to do such a better job with this. I never even hear them try to explain what Biden would do, what a Biden administration will do differently, especially given the role that the states have. Do they just say Biden's going to be better, or do they have some reason as to why?
You don't need a reason. You just need a great briefing, a great speech, the right words, the right narrative, and they all fall into line. The biggest problem we have in this country is we have no working media right now, except for guys like you. But major networks, newspapers, all cover this up. They should be all over these guys. How does Cuomo get away with this? There's no media fact checking all of this. There's no media exposing the truth. I read the publishers now demanding that Donald Trump can't publish a book. Why would a man who put kids in cages be allowed to publish a book? Well, that's Joe Biden. Where's the media to call them out on this? You're just getting one side of the story.
And on the fact-checking and looking at information and then holding people accountable part of this, Biden tweeted out yesterday, "I know masks have become a partisan issue, but it's a patriotic act. Experts say wearing a mask from now till April will save more than 50,000 lives." I mean, they've been telling us about all the lives saved if we just do what they say for a long time here. It seems like no one ever goes back to check the math, Mark. It seems like they say this stuff so that everyone obeys, but then we look at it and the projections are not very good.
Hey, it's another brilliant plan. Wear a mask. Does he know we've all been wearing masks for the last 8 months? I know there's a homeless guy somewhere now wearing one. There's a crazy Karen who won't put one on, but everybody's been wearing masks.
All wearing masks.
What's his next plan? What's his other plan? Seatbelts? I mean,
yeah, there were pieces written back in May about how if we had 80% mask compliance, we would effectively defeat the virus. Like, we wouldn't even have to worry about it anymore. We've had over 80% compliance with masks based on all the surveys, all the different data you can look at for over 6 months. And we've had the worst ever spikes in California and spikes elsewhere across the country. So we'll see. The Biden administration, they're going to have magic answers that they can't tell us about quite yet, Mark, but we appreciate you're going to hold them to account. And don't let Cuomo, wiggle out of responsibility either, all right?
All right, but he's went to briefing school. He learned how to do that. Management school, that he never went to.
Mark Simone of 710 WOR. Mark, good to see you. Thanks so much. It's time for our rapid fire look at some of the stories we haven't gotten to yet. Quick hits up next. These days, being prepared for the unknown is more important than ever. I'm sure you've noticed the world we live in is anything but predictable. We can all benefit from something reliable right about now. What could be more reliable than real gold and silver? I'm talking about real gold and silver you can hold right in your hands. Call the Oxford Gold Group right now. Learn how easy it is to get real gold and silver sent securely directly to your home, or how you can have real gold and silver placed in your IRA or 401k. Oxford Gold Group is who I get my gold from. You should too. With all the federal spending going on right now, who knows what's going to happen to the value of the dollars in your bank account? Take action today. Just call the Oxford Gold Group at 833-600-GOLD and ask for your free guide on owning gold and silver. Again, call the Oxford Gold Group right now at 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group is the only gold company I trust. Call them right now at 833-600-GOLD. One more time, that's 833-600-GOLD. The Oxford Gold Group. Check them out today. A big tech insider says problematic conservatives need to be censored, and an MSNBC analyst claims MAGA supporters are a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda was. Those are our top stories in tonight's Quick Hits. We'll start with the former chief security officer at Facebook, Alex Stamos. Now, you need to hear this from him. You need to hear the way that the left and the big tech oligarchs and all their little minions really think that it's up to them to decide what acceptable content is for people to consume in the political realm. We're not talking about anything that's illegal. We're talking about ideas that they don't like, things that upset or offend them, that you shouldn't even have the opportunity to hear it. It should be shut down, deplatformed, and canceled. Here was a senior guy at Facebook. This is what he says.
It's really hard because what's happening is people are able to seek out the information that makes them feel good. That is what's happening, is that people have so much choice now. They can choose what their news sources are. They can choose what influencers they want to follow. And they can try to seal out anything that helps them question that. And I think that gets to a really core issue with how our freedoms as Americans and the way we've treated press freedom in the past is being abused by these actors. In that we have given a lot of leeway, both in the traditional media and on social media, to people to have a very broad range of political views.
A broad range of views, oh my gosh! Shut it down! Deplatform those cable channels that are conservative. Get rid of those platforms that conservatives are setting up so they can speak to each other about, lower taxes in the Constitution. Not allowed! Fact check it. These people are nuts. But it gets nuttier. It does get crazier, I gotta tell you. The fellow who does analysis on TV, I don't even remember, I think this is on, CNN, it's on one of those channels, it's all the same thing. Mehdi Hassan, MSNBC, thank you, Control. I thought CNN, MSNBC, potatoes. It's crazy no matter where you are. But here he is talking about how the real concern that we should all have now is not only, of course, the right-wing extremism that seeks to destroy the entire country in any moment. I mean, they've been saying this for a long time, but now they've really sunk their teeth into this whole situation. But then also, when you compare where the U.S. is right now and what the threat was from Al-Qaeda then, when Al-Qaeda did 9/11, to Trump supporters now, this guy at MSNBC wants you to know that Trump supporters, bigger threat than Al-Qaeda. Play it.
The threat to our democracy and our quote-unquote way of life is much more serious and real now than it was even after September the 11th, 2001. And don't get me wrong, 9/11 was a horrific mass casualty attack of a kind unique in modern history. 3,000 people killed in a single morning. But in my view, Al-Qaeda after 9/11 was not as much of a threat to us, did not have the kind of advantages or strengths even, that this domestic movement of Oath Keepers and Proud Boys and militiamen and neo-Nazis and QAnon types, what I would call MAGA terrorists, that they have right now.
I mean, this is insane. Al-Qaeda was trying to, for years afterwards, mass casualty attacks, blow planes out of the sky. I mean, and here we are. And never the rise of ISIS, all these things that you talk about with jihadist ideology, but we're being told that the MAGA terrorists are the real threat. There is nothing that they won't say at this point. They will push this as far as they possibly can until people say, no, enough is enough. There's a difference between a riot and a full-on coup. There is a difference between these things. We should understand that. But they're going to keep with the overstatement here. Here's Jamie Raskin, and another one, just the worst thing that a president of the United States has ever, worse than the internment of Japanese Americans, for example. This is worse than that, according to Jamie Raskin. Play it.
This was the most terrible crime ever by a president of the United States against our country. And I want everybody to feel the gravity and the solemnity of those events.
Wow. A lot of other things you could look at in history and you'd say, I think those are much worse crimes. But nonetheless, this is what the Democrats are going to say. They're going to continue to say it. And in time, we will find, I think, our footing to push back on the exaggerations and the lunacy. But for now, we've just got to hold the line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is up next. Have a great weekend, everybody. Shields high.